All right, welcome to Family Tech Live, where I talk to all sorts of people about technology and the way it interacts with our daily life, helping families understand and manage technology in their homes. Today's guest, I'm so excited because I have been wanting to talk about these topics for so long. Is Lawyer Liz. Lawyer Liz, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you've got going on.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for the invitation. So I am a lawyer by training and always give the caveat you get what you pay for when it comes to legal advice. So I will
And we're not
pontificate.
paying for this one, so
Exactly.
not legal
Exactly.
advice.
Exactly. I'm a lawyer, but not yours.
Right.
Unless you're
There you
listening
go.
in from Scythe, in which case I am the company's lawyer. Uh,
There-
but no, and hopefully I have colleagues that I harass them a little bit. I was like, all right, guys, can y'all help and listen in? But I am currently VP of operations for Scythe, which is an adversary emulation platform, and work on issues of really related to cybersecurity, privacy. How do we build better? And former senior assistant city attorney, and have worked with security researchers for about the past, I don't know, 16, 17 years. And I will be joined in the background slightly by Mr. Chance Pants. He is also not a lawyer. And apologies to everyone if he decides to chime in on what he thinks about the state of privacy by howling or otherwise disrupting.
He's very upset about what's going on with tech companies.
As he should be. I mean,
Right.
especially what they're doing with the data and how they're treating not only us as commodities, but children and
Wow.
those who really don't have options or voices in it. So, all the
So
tea.
he's talking for all of the kids. That's his passion right there.
I mean, it's a good rallying cry. It can be used on
Yeah.
both sides of the argument for the children or for the children. So,
Right, right. I always think of Simpsons, won't somebody please think of the children?
right,
I don't
right. Oh, the Simpsons are so good for so many of the analogies. I feel like several, be it companies or legislators, just need to stand in front of the like chalkboard and write it out 100 times as the chaos ensues
Right.
around them. Mhm.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Take a page out of Bart's playbook. So
Yes.
that's a great segue into exactly our first topic. So what are your kind of general thoughts about the government getting involved in tech companies? Like, is there a line between regulations and overreaching?
Always. And there's also opportunities to kind of look at. So, when I've worked on different cutting edge technology, for example, unmanned systems, drones, everyone
Right.
panics and says, oh, we need to ban drones. And you have to look at them and go, well, they're really just flying computers. And we've had unmanned aerial aircraft sent up. Marilyn Monroe, for example, during World War
Wow.
II, worked at a drone factory
Oh,
briefly.
that's
So,
amazing.
Norma
I
Jean,
had no idea.
you learn something new every time.
You really
But you
do.
you look at that. So when you look at legislators and what are they, or regulators, what are they looking at? And having to remind them instead, really drill down. Don't focus on the technology as much as the underlying issues. So is it protecting, I'd say protecting children, but protecting their interests, their rights, because they aren't able to make the same decisions. Privacy should be, by design. And de-identification. So when we're using all these devices that we don't necessarily have a choice to, de-identification should be
Right.
by default, because when you think about our data and our privacy and the security of this, it's similar to healthcare. So it's the data care. So just as we protect our medical records and stuff, that again, it's kind of that data care. So when you look at regulating it, are you regulating like, oh, cancer is bad? Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, we know that. But what is it about? Like, oh, that data is yours. You should be able to protect it, keep it, and take it with you. So again, same thing. what are they focusing on? And are they focusing on the right aspects? Are they focusing on the patient, the consumer? Or are they focusing on like, oh, the algorithms and the ads?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, let's dig right into that for sure. So this week, especially like I'm like, this is super timely. We've scheduled this months ago. And luckily, this week there's actual legislation going on in the Senate. So, can you tell me just kind of a little bit about what happened this week, and what your thoughts are, and then I can
Yeah,
fill in the
it
blanks too. Yeah.
absolutely. So there were two pieces of legislation that came through committee. And I say two pieces because there's actually welcome to sausage making. It's not just, there was a lot of back and forth. And if anyone's interested, I'm sure you can share some of the links to just about any article coming from the Hill or the others get
Yeah.
into what was going on. We got to see some of the wrangling. So we had the Child Online Privacy and Protection Act, COPPA, and we also had the Kids Online Safety Act that, again, came through committee and passed. There was a lot of changes that were going into them in the background and a lot of amendment as happens. You have markups. There was some of it was passing by voice vote, and then you had some of the senators kind of saying, hey, I've got other legislation that I don't feel has been getting attention, so whether we want to align that to childhood antics, but in this case it's actually not that bad, but they were like, well, I'm going to hold up, I'm voting against this, or I'm pushing this even though I support it, but I think you need to look at my bill. So it's kind of like all the children, the firstborn child going, hey, I'm getting attention. The middle child, like, I'm going to light stuff on fire until someone pays attention. The youngest child just going, no, I already lit it on fire.
Right.
Um, but
I'm the youngest. I totally get it.
as the oldest, I'm like, no, I'm sitting there
Yeah.
in line. Yeah. But with this legislation and with COPPA, so you think of like all the marketing that's aimed towards children. That's going to fall under the COPPA legislation, and that's extending it and getting a broader age range, but also looking at, okay, what can you market to them? How can you use that information? And it's kind of like, okay, that was a smoother sailing piece of the legislation. The more juicy kind of younger child, middle child, if we're using that analogy, was happening with the Kids Online Safety Act. Because at first blush, it's coming out of all of the juicy hearings we had with the Facebook, what was she, engineer? I forgot, insider,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
who
Hogan, I
let,
think. Yeah.
yeah, where she talked about like, hey, by the way, none of this is by accident. We know exactly what's happening. We know, and much like sugary breakfast cereals, like absolutely, we are putting as much sugar in the sugar bombs as we can. And we're putting all kinds of toy prizes in the cereal. And we're doing all these things knowing that we're gathering this data, this information, that we don't have parental controls. We don't have all this stuff. And you've seen a bunch of different lawsuits that came out of some of that information and parents. So this is all of that coming to a head. And what, again, at first blush sounds like, okay, this isn't so bad. It's for the children. It's going to protect all these, I'd say preteens, but all these children who are looking at Instagram without parental controls. It's your feed is using targeted, like, oh, I see you liked this post, or I see you. May I recommend these five other, and they're going to instantly keep flowing from one to the next, one to the next. It's not. And by the way, are you, are you over 18 or over? Don't care, just to ask, like, I'm
Just
kind of asking, but I'm not really wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
Right.
Um,
Are
so
you? Okay, I
exactly.
guess. Yeah.
it's like I make the joke all the time. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you I'm 26.
Right. Me too.
I'm
I'm
going
totally
to
26.
absolutely. And I just remember, like, as I like asking children, like, "Are you like yes?" Was it Ghostbusters? Are you a
Oh, yeah.
god? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
Right. When
am.
somebody asks if you're a god,
Right.
say yes.
Say yes. Are you over 18? Are you old enough to be on this platform? Yes. But are you really? So
Right.
that's where we had the Kids Online Safety Act come through, and it all of these have been introduced earlier in the year. Well, I say that early in the year, and one of them was last year, but really they've been percolating, and that got pushed up. And with the Kids Online Safety Act, what it would do is put in those verifications required, but it would also give like the ability to sue these platforms and allow parents
Interesting. That would open that
to
up.
it does. And what it's intended to do is, again, shift the focus away from it, saying, like, hey, companies, stop paying attention to profit and pay attention to what's happening. But with every good, well-intended bill, um, something goes wrong. So in this case, you're talking about, suddenly we're going to have to verify ages. We're going to push some of this data out to researchers. We're going to, but again, and the other question is, who does it apply to? How do you define this? Which is one of the other pitfalls that frequently, the devil's in the details, and words have meaning. And what we think we mean when we like, okay, this is who we're going after. Is that really who we're going, or have we somehow brought in all these others? So yeah, there's a lot. I just pick a thread and let's pull it and play with it, because when you have all these amendments coming in and agreement from amongst the senators and committee chairs to now, hey, we're going to keep working this. So what's going to happen is it's now going to move forward into the Senate. You're going to have debate depending on how they introduce the bill there. Then, of course, once it goes to the Senate, you're going to have to go over to the House side, and there's still a long road ahead, but it's certainly getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about kind of companies' responsibility? So, if this legislation goes through, there's going to be, I mean, it would affect adults as well. Like, I would also have to prove my age. And, what do you think about
Absolutely.
all of that? Yeah.
So, yes, and that's one of the best, or an easy jumping off point for some of the issues, because what it's looking at is like, okay, well, you don't have a driver's license when you're 8. You
Right.
don't have, and it gets into kind of the broader impacts as well on, like, the biometric data. So what they're looking at in the age verification for this is, one, okay, well, um, prove your age with a driver's license. Well, don't have that. Passport,
Right.
something. Don't have that. Don't have a government issued ID. Okay.
Right.
Well, get your friends to verify, or get someone else to verify your age. Like,
Yeah.
um, I now have visions of, like, every teen movie where they're
Yeah.
all sitting and, like, somebody has the fake ID and they
Right.
kind of slide cigarettes, beer, whatever, like, across. Like,
Yeah.
are you like, again, are you a god? Yes, I am. Are
Totally.
you this?
Yeah.
And all the friends in the back going, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely. And, like, are you their parent or guardian? Yes. Well, how do we know? So now who are we going to
Right.
verify to
Yeah.
verify the age of the child, or not, or the adult? And you start getting into the issues, just as we see with some of the voting requirements with proof
Oh,
of
for sure.
identification, what qualifies. And now I've got Facebook, or parent company Meta, now
Yeah.
has my driver's license on file.
Right.
They don't need to know how much I
Absolutely.
weigh. They don't need to know how tall I am. They can probably
Or
already
even your
guess
birth
it.
certificate. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Like,
none of that. But now they have it. And what are they going to do with it? And what restrictions are we going to place? And sure, we're going to put these restrictions. But as we saw with like Cambridge Analytica and all these other, like, okay, if you're putting restrictions in place, like the horse is already out of the barn. Like they have
yeah,
the information. There's going to be a breach. There's going to be a leak. And yes, you could argue, well, there's so many other places that information's kept stored. Yeah, but then why do we need one more? One more
right.
just means one more opportunity. And I get it's for the children, but again, now you've got that overarching. So, okay, that didn't work. The other third mechanism for that is, well, okay, well, we'll use age verification software. What do you mean? Well, we'll
Right.
scan and we'll look at your biometric. Like, oh, okay.
Like, I look really young for my age. Like, am I gonna be 16 all
Right.
of a sudden? Yeah.
Right. And now you're getting into, and I keep going back to because it's one of the easiest ways of like, folks, you're getting this wrong if you are not inclusive. So you're assuming that I present exactly like my driver's license, but you
Right.
also assume that I present exactly like, age, that I don't have some underlying condition or that there is not something that you also assume now that I have access to whatever is necessary. Like you can use Facebook without having a cell phone, without having, you can use Instagram, you can use some of these, where it's required for school. But also, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about just Facebook? Or have we now, broadened it to where it encompasses platforms such as Signal?
Right.
Which is a messaging app that is more secure. And actually,
I
what I would
am
recommend if you're
yeah.
having communications with, like, absolutely use apps like Signal, WhatsApp and
Yeah.
Telegram. That's a whole nother show we can talk about. Some of
And
the,
we might even have to continue this to another show too. This has been
yeah.
fascinating so far. Yeah.
No, well, thank you. These are the things that I love geeking out about because
Yeah, me too.
you, again, it's those you don't think about what are the broader implications. It goes back to the whole when you try to regulate this, words have meaning. So, how are you defining it to narrow it just to these platforms that we've identified? Like Facebook has a problem. Instagram has a problem. All right. There are no age verification. So once you kind of get through those initial hurdles of exactly what is this, where is that biometric, and are we comfortable with biometric data being collected and stored by these companies
Right.
with children and
Who
are
have
they
proved so
comfortable?
well that they are
Oh,
privacy minded.
absolutely, and not to completely call it, but I may or may not have a niece who may or may not be too young to use, some of these platforms, who may or may not have decided that glitter eyeliner, was absolutely the best thing to apply in the car. And so I'm getting this terrified call of like, will I go blind? And I'm like, look, we've all been there. Anyone who's tried to put on makeup in the car, first
Right.
of all, knows that that's a disaster. But we've all tried glitter at some point, and makeup, and it's going to go sideways. But is that the same, same mental, phase or assessing, cognitive abilities to be able to say, well, yes, I understand what's going to happen when you scan my biometric data. And I am a-okay that it's now going to be shared with all these different things. They don't know. We don't like they can't even consent to, you can't get your ears pierced without having an adult with you, but you should absolutely be able to consent on your own or your parent or guardian making a decision for you because obviously children and parents agree all the time on
All the time.
all the time. And now, how are we going to establish that someone actually is the person who, the adult who is authorized to make that decision on behalf
Right.
of the child? Like, is this your mom? Yes, absolutely. Well,
Totally.
are you sure? Absolutely. Go ahead, pierce that ear. Pierce it.
Right.
Let me do this. Like, eh, there's just so many different things
Yeah.
that just from that verification, it's like, okay, let's slow
That's
our roll a little bit here.
like Ferris Bueller was able to pretend he was like 5 different people on all those answering machines. So,
Exactly, exactly. And, you start getting into, especially too, when you think about if you have other accounts that are, say, a business account or like a different charity, nonprofit, like so many accounts may not be for the purpose of which they are. So, how are you going to roll that in? And again, who's this going to apply to?
right.
Does it wrap in all these other, web-based applications? And again, going back to, does it apply to iMessage? Does it apply to, Signal, all these other messaging apps? Where are we drawing that in, or where are we reining it in? And all of this caused because certain platforms couldn't, help themselves. They saw the
Right.
profit, they saw that, and they didn't bake in the privacy, and they didn't allow for the de-identification.
Yeah. That's super fascinating. So let's say that we hurdle the age verification, which you are
Mhm.
totally right. And that's a part that I really haven't thought about that much. We're like, where is this age verification even coming from? Like, adults are going to have to do it, kids are going to have to do it. Like, crazy. That's so interesting.
And heavens forbid, I know a lot of people in the security community who would put their birth date as January 1st and then pick a random year. And that would be their, like, oh, so it's kind of the joke on January 1st, happy birthday to all of my friends who have, you know, done that. But
Yeah.
even just clearing that, like the parental controls,
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? Like, okay, that's a great aspect of it. Absolutely. Let's add in the parental controls.
Yeah.
But, you know, who who gets to say, like, how do you identify, and who is monitoring that? And
Right.
who is able to say, like, all right, I this is I am the adult who can do this. Well, how do we know that they're being followed? How do we know that, and again, it goes back to who's going to have access to that data as well.
Yeah. So speaking of parental controls, what are your thoughts on like the government enforcing them to like so say we jump the hurdle, we've everybody is age verified for however long.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
what about forcing these companies to have parental controls? Cuz I mean, just from my perspective, I don't see the purpose of it. I mean, I would like for the companies to implement it themselves for sure, but the government, like, forcing the company to say, "You have to have parental controls on that." On my perspective, I'm like, "Okay, well, parents, you don't have to allow your kid on that platform if it doesn't have the parental controls that you desire." So, like, why is the government getting involved here? Can you kinda
And it's well, exactly, and it's opening the
Yeah,
door to the censorship aspect of it, of, "Okay, I have blocked all discussion of X, Y, or Z." Um,
sure.
well, what happens, like, where does that, "Okay, you've blocked posts that, use a certain word." Oh, because you can't just misspell that word, or,
Right.
uh use a different little emoji to come, and of course they'll go through and do that. But what if a child maybe is, or a user of a platform is just finding out, like, creating that safe space where perhaps it's a positive discussion of a topic, so not
For
one
sure.
that's leading young women, and you see some of the cases that came out of California, and I'm going to forget the other one where it's the parents are suing. And in this case, it was horrible in that the child suicide, where she had
Yeah.
developed this absolute addiction. And so you have to look at what are the parental controls. Is it time limiting? All right, that's a little bit, yeah, that makes it a little bit easier. But is it prohibiting certain words? Because water will always find a way. Children will always find a
Yeah.
way to get access to what they want to access, and
So true.
so and how is it? Is it then also closing off again those kind of safe spaces? Is it when we've seen with books and certain topics in certain school districts now? What happens with the overreach? Where, well, this topic shouldn't be discussed. Well, all right, how are we going to build that in? And also, again, it kind of goes back to that, who's deciding? And who does that data go to? That, well, these are the restricted conversations, or these are the different topics. So I don't know that that's government's role, but what happens when we've shown the companies are just ignoring it for,
Right.
and so that gets into a little bit of where we've seen COPPA on restricting what ads can be, what stuff can be marketed to children, parents having the right to request it. Hi, I'd like all my child's data that you've been collecting, I'd like it deleted. But then
Yeah.
again, if it's already been collected, sure, yeah, okay, it's deleted. Mhm.
Right.
But we've already sold it to 5 other
I'm a
users.
god too. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we get the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man,
Right.
and we get cats and dogs living together in harmony. It's kind of like, well, again, it's the thought popped into your head, so it's there.
Right. Yeah.
And but
Um,
at the same time,
so
I do think as we've seen, like with some of the, even though I hate it, I kind of get it and I respect it. Like with driving, when you
yeah.
use Connect your iPhone and you get Apple CarPlay, where it's like, hey, do you want to turn on silence notifications? Letting Giving some of that control to parents or adults, or whomever it is managing that account. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and what you said too, even, I've talked to a friend who said, "I didn't put this on my calendar. I, like, literally just, like, said, 'Hey, I'm, like, going to Costco,' or something like that, and when I got in the car, my Apple Play was like, 'Would you like directions to Costco?' or something like
It's
that." Right,
is
right?
it is
Crazy.
absolutely, and the intersectionality of where all these different, you don't realize what is talking to what. And, you also have to look at, well, again, who has access to this and who gets to know? Like, oh, I see this account has restricted this, this, and this. Well, that's interesting. Like, go on. Why would
Right.
they be? Um, exactly. Or I forget, there was something else. Exactly. I had searched for something and it starts popping up. I do have to laugh though when Instagram started recommending that I like started marketing eye patches to me. And I'm like,
Interesting.
what?
What was I
Did
searching that
I
led to this?
search
Yeah,
for? And I joke that on occasion I will throw searchers. I'm like, I mean, I joke about it. I don't necessarily do it. Of just
yeah.
throwing in a random search of like, turtle aquariums. Well, do you have a turtle? Nope. Are you gonna get one? Nope.
Nope.
But as far as you know, or like samurai swords, like, do you? Nope. But it really highlights that bigger issue
Yeah,
of, well, who's having access to it, and how do we treat it like our healthcare data? Like, how do we? This is unique to me. Let's protect it and treat it as such.
yeah. So you did mention this this court case, and I'm really curious to get your opinion on uh, kind of it, like, and I get, it's a terrible situation, but honestly, from a parent's perspective, I don't need to let my 12-year-old, 12-year-old is not even allowed to be on Snapchat. Um, but again, I'm totally over 13.
Mhm,
Um, so
mhm.
where is the parental responsibility in this case? And like what kind of grounds are they even like presenting this on?
Well, and that's what's interesting is when you looked at this one, you had a child that for 2 years had built up and was such a heavily documented case of addiction. And we saw it with video game systems and stuff where parents would claim, well, of course, there would be these stories of such an outlier case of this person played video games nonstop for an entire week, didn't get up. But when you look at a 12-year-old who had access to devices, was able to then get, but they were online for so many hours that it was causing sleep deprivation and it was causing absenteeism from school. And it was completely that you're like, wow, where were the warning signs? And how were you not having these conversations?
Right.
With your child of like a, having that level of care. But that's easy to judge. But when then you look at the companies where you have those, insider knowledge going, oh yeah, no, we're totally aware. We've designed the system to do this, that there has to be a balance somewhere. And it's okay focusing on, well, did you know that the way you've designed this is causing, like, if that was the intended effect, then is it akin to cigarettes?
Right.
Which, where you're saying, no, we made it as addictive as possible. Well, yeah, do you need to take some responsibility? So it's like the one half the brain, or, the angel and the devil, one side is saying, well, where was some of this control? This was completely, she had access to this, and it led to a horrible, horrible result that nobody wanted. And so, where were the warning signs? How did they get missed? Perhaps that's an opportunity to look at, well, what should parents be, what should we be educating on the flip side so that we can build that? Well, I had no idea. Well, okay, perhaps we do. Perhaps we go through and help educate on, these are some of the warning signs. These are some of the things you can do. Maybe we don't put all of the school assignments, like maybe we encourage children, build that ability to unplug, uh, which of course that means the adults would have to follow it as well. um,
Right.
but build that in. But then companies, like, if you know you're doing this and you're causing harm, then do we open you up to that kind of, you have some liability. Was there a harm? Did you cause it? And as a result, was there some damage? That's the underlying facet of how we approach our torts in our legal system. Of like, look, there was a duty, there was a harm. There was a breach, there was a duty, there was a breach, there was harm, causation. Are you going through those steps? So I think it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out, and whether, it's kind of like you wish companies could do this on their own. That you
Right.
wish that it wouldn't take, but companies are focused on profit. I mean, that's, they answer to the shareholders, and or they answer to the board or the investors, or they're trying to generate that, and finding that right balance of, okay, and again, looking at what is the harm, what are we trying to work on, versus, all right, what is kind of, let's not ban the technology, let's look at what the harm is and what were some of the safeguards that obviously should have been in place.
Sure. And that you brought up a really good point about cigarettes. 'Cause I kind of keyed in on that as well. So now we have these like I you said the educating parents.
Mhm.
We have these commercials, and you seem kind of my age, so, the, like, "This is your
26.
brain, this is your brain on drugs,"
Yes!
like
That
like,
that
"Where
don't
did you
work.
learn to do this?" "You, alright, I learned it from
You
watching
do
you."
and, I mean, can't you
Do you think
just
we'll
see
have
it?
those kind of commercials for, like, social media, trying to educate parents
Yes,
on, like, these
yes.
dangers?
I mean, it's like, where did you learn not to
Yeah.
I learned it from you. And
You,
texting
right?
it, it's not gonna be
Yeah. Oh,
screaming at the
yeah, they're
computer,
texting
it's
it.
gonna be texting it back. I, like, learned it from you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out what emoji would it be, like an eggs and a frying pan emoji,
Right.
or would it be like a mirror? Like, "Look in the
Yeah,
mirror,
yeah.
dad." Um
Right.
and yeah, I mean, I think it's we're all trying to struggle with that of, and especially coming out of, I say coming out of, whether folks, data presents, are we truly out of the pandemic? Are we still in the middle of it? Are we
Right.
just
Who
at the
knows?
first of yeah. But as we've had to adjust and have been spending more time not uh interacting with each other at restaurants and all that. Okay, we spend a lot of time on our phones and devices. Now, how do we
Yeah.
break ourselves out of that? So,
Yeah,
mhm,
for sure.
mhm.
Um, so
I live in a
like,
glass house, so I will not be throwing stones at it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I am never on my phone when I shouldn't be.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Nope,
Totally not.
not me, not me.
Yeah. So and I've even told that to there are things that you can do, as a parent to even like kind of curtail your thing because these aren't just addictive to kids, they're addictive to parents. Start scrolling TikTok and then, an hour later I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done
Right,
with my day?" You know.
right. Well, and it's putting those, and I think that's a great start, putting those timelines, almost like calendar reminders of like,
Right.
hey, even though I do feel like my Apple Watch is a little judgy when it's
Right.
telling
It's
me,
time to get up.
it's time to stand, especially when it's completely off, like, the, little sensors inside are off, because 'cause I'm like, I've been standing for the last hour. I've just been standing still because of what I
Right.
was doing. Like one time I taught a webinar and I did it standing
Oh,
up
sure.
because you get more energy when you're
Yeah.
presenting standing up. So I did that. And it was like the entire time, even though I'm like gesturing wildly, it was kind of going, hey, you haven't stood. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have not sat down for the last hour. Like, but okay, sure.
Stop
But that
judging me,
goes
Apple.
right? But that goes to show, we're putting a lot of faith when we start putting the guardrails based on the tech. When we say,
Right.
okay, you need to, we're going to trust that whatever age verification software, device, scan, biometric data isn't wrong,
Yeah.
because it could be. And when you talk about like some of this, you see this, you talk about putting restrictions on certain content. Well, okay, what happens when you see all the time people saying, hey, this video got flagged for X? I have no idea why. But there's no, like, oh, yep, somebody reported me again.
Right.
And you have to deal with like the online harassment of, or again, what happens when it's wrong? Or
Right.
your facial, it's what I talk about with facial recognition. What happens when your information, your data has changed? Uh,
Right.
how do we deal with
If you
that?
get in a
So
car accident and your, face is disfigured and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, or heavens forbid, I just don't like my nose, I wanna change it.
Right.
Or,
Right.
fillers, I mean, I don't know, when I turn
Right.
27, I may wanna do some of that. It's my prerogative, and,
Right.
you know, now I have to,
Yeah.
because my facial scan biometric data got associated with, I mean, heavens forbid,
Right.
it gets leaked out, the data, gets entered in wrong. I mean,
Right.
during my college applications, I wasn't paying attention and had entered in my, like, transposed two numbers in my social security number. or 2 digits,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the amount of effort it took to get that corrected. And, of course, like, I wanted to yell at the official, like, "I didn't wanna go to your stupid school anyway." Um, but,
It
like,
does.
yeah, and also who gets access to that? So,
Yeah.
there's a lot that's going on. It'll be interesting to see how the markups, but also amendments to these to the legislation, but also the lawsuits.
Right. Yeah. Well, and to your biometric point too, um, like I know so many people whose kids can unlock their iPhone with their face just because they look so similar to their parent, and so how do I know if it's my 15-year-old or if it's
Mhm.
actually me? You know, the technology is definitely not there yet for sure.
It's not, and part of that's just because of, and if for other tech wonks that want to, like, policy nerds that want to pull these threads, there's some great research that's been going on over the years on how the data sets that built a lot of this AI and were biased. When you talk about, as parents go through and will make comments, we saw this in my family where my brothers and the sisters, like, we were very different, and how we would act and how we would do things. Well, a lot of medical studies were, up until, was it the 90s, women weren't used as prevalently as for the tests, and our bodies
Sure.
are different. And so when you look at the data sets, a lot of the AI machine learning was built on faulty data sets where they didn't use people of color, didn't use any of, like, that diversity, and were built on the same images. So that's what we're now going to rely on to
Right.
provide access to all this stuff. Like, I have questions. Mhm.
Yeah,
Just a few.
for sure. Just a couple.
Just a few.
Um, Super interesting. So we've talked about the lawsuits. Let's go back a little bit, and we're talking more about government overreaching and regulation. So, a couple of really interesting cases that have come up in the EU that I think we're going to come, over here. Uh, Two of them. The first is the universal charger. So, USB-C, at least in the EU, is going to be enforced on all
Mhm,
devices. So, come
mhm.
2023, most likely the iPhone will change to a USB-C just because of this EU legislation. And then right now, they're talking about iMessage and enforcing that to kind of open up cross-platform. And again, I am a big fan of opening up iMessage to RCS and
Mhm.
have it cross-platform, but where do we think like it's a little overreaching to like enforce this on to tech companies?
Well, and people don't think of what all that's gonna impact,
Right.
because, for example, you get on an airplane and you want to use the in-flight entertainment system, and they have to give you headphones because the headphone jacks that used to be in our mobile devices, and I still have it depending on the MacBook that I get. You can
Mhm.
still find them and stuff, but on others you can't. So now you've got to get a connector device. So now what you're really doing on some levels is also enforcing and making the consumer have to go out and purchase additional things. Like, what happened to, I love, like, you know, your washer dryer, like when machinery and all of our technology was designed and built to last. And now it's
Right.
designed to be disposable.
Right.
Like, oh, just throw it away. Okay, that's
Yeah.
not very, uh, you know, climate change.
My phone's 2 years
That's,
old. Time to get rid of it. Like,
yeah. So now we have to spend the money, and you assume that I have the money to spend. Like, I already spent it. I spent $1,000, $700, $800 on this device. And now you're telling me that device is not going to be compatible with all these other things. And okay, but it's universal. Great. Now we all have to get up to the standard. And it means, we've created this obsolescence that is not, it's not economical. It creates this like disparity between the haves and the have-nots, but it also means that it won't work with, perhaps my car chargers, or, oh, they have to be hands-free. Well, it needs to be on Bluetooth. Well, depending on the car and the device, Bluetooth doesn't always talk. My personal favorite is like I'm holding up the phone, Bluetooth is on, I'm trying to connect to the car. It's like, nope, no device is detected. I'm like, it's right here, right
See
here. Nope, nothing, nothing detected. Nothing detected. It happens for me like a software update for, so
Right.
yes, I feel like on the one hand, at first blush, I was like, that's fantastic. Yes, please stop updating. But I had an experience, like, it hurts this 2 weeks ago. I did not bring the right charger. So, yes, on the one hand, it'd be fantastic if they were all universal and stuff, but it also became annoying. I had to go to different cars. I'm like, nope, doesn't have the right charger. Nope, doesn't have the right jack. Nope. And it will be interesting too to see how that works across countries, because
Right.
especially when you get into some of these security issues where it's like, well, okay, but currently, IP theft and stuff, you have certain countries at odds with each other. So, all right, how do we go? And anyone who's had to travel knows you need to have different jacks for different, or not, but different cords and plugs. It's like, all right, we
Yeah.
can't even all decide on which side of the road to drive on. So
Or what
you think,
measurement system to use?
right? Yeah. But you think we're going to be all able to, and it gets into, like you said, like the issues with multinational, but it also recognizes that, you know, devices, there is some benefit to being able to move across platforms. There is some
Right.
benefit to the consistency and knowing that, hey, the same stuff that works here works there. That it's like, are you a Mac or a PC? Are you this or are you that? And it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Again, that whole government
Yeah.
regulation.
Yeah, like, I mean, for me, I'm kind of just more of a freedom lover, I guess,
Mhm, mhm.
I think tech companies should be able, like, if I want some random little charging port, then I should be able to have some random little charging port. That's my choice. And, if people don't want to buy my product, then I won't succeed as a company,
Right.
because
Well, and
nobody's
that's
buying my product. Yeah.
exactly. Well, and that's the challenge, and that's certainly something, uh, gratuitous plug for Scythe. But as we're a startup and
Yeah.
we are constantly trying to, if our customers and our users don't want a feature, and if they're not willing to pay for it, then we won't build it, or
Right.
we will pivot, we will go in a
Yeah.
different direction. Or if they're all coming and saying like, hey, we're an adversary emulation platform, so what that means is you get to recreate all the latest, like, ransomware, malware stuff. And they say like, hey, I really want to test this, and enough people ask, it's like, well, obviously we're going to create that, or we're going to create an integration so that you can
Right.
use our platform with this other product or platform. Because if not, they're going to our competitor, because our
Right.
competitors could, or like, we want to get there first because we can see like, oh, everybody's using this. Well, if we don't have an integration for that, nobody's going to use us, or our competitor. Again, it's let the market decide to some degree. But
Right.
lessons from
Yeah. Like,
startup life, that yes. And if you can't, if we build a product that can't be used with certain different language, like, is it a Linux base? It doesn't, like, does it work with this? Well, if it doesn't, again, we go back to nobody buys it, nobody uses it. Or our poor customer support and help desk will call me like very like, Liz, make it stop. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Talk to product, talk to
Yeah.
customer success. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we just got a comment too.
mhm.
Free competition tends to create the best standards. Government creates standards convenient for them and their cronies. They persist long after they've outlived their usefulness.
Yes. Well, and I
Totally
said,
agree.
well, and it is. It's just like, it's they're going to go to kind of what's it, the squeakiest wheel. A lot of times with the radio, it's like who has their ear and who has created this stuff. So yes, it becomes a free competition, and sometimes there does have to be a nudge because we are seeing with again with the Meta, Facebook, and all that. They're like, hey, competition. That means ad dollars. How are we getting those ad dollars? And how are we using it? It's like, if only you had been better. If if only Google actually did follow the do better, be better, and they
Right.
weren't trying to, yeah. Mhm, mhm.
No, that totally makes sense. So, along those competition lines, I definitely want to get into briefly the Epic Games case as we're talking
Right,
about competition. Um,
right.
so I've kind of told my followers a little bit, kind of a little road so far, but like, can you give us just a brief explanation of what happened with Epic Games and I can,
Well, I mean, it goes with the central theme, and
yeah,
what's fascinating is watching it from an app store perspective, but also looking at you have someone who's created a game, and part of the game makers have figured out, all right, we're going to bring you into the game, we're going to get you hooked, and
right,
then we're going to have in-store purchase or in-game in-app purchases, because admit it, you don't want to necessarily, you want to get the latest skin, you want to get the latest thing. And Apple has said, okay, we've created this platform, and we've created a way for you to get into our users, but in exchange for giving you access to our users, and in exchange for, we're going to do some quality control, we're going to do some, minimum standards, etc. So we're going to charge you, because again, it all comes back to the dollars. And so, yeah, so they've said, okay, so to do this, you're going to have to meet certain, and we're going to put certain restrictions, we're going to put parameters, and also we get a cut. We get a cut. And so, you've got Epic going, "Mm, what if I want to go a different route? What if I want to be on your devices? But what if I want to, not give you 30%? Was it
right.
30%? Yeah. And
It's
what if
it's
I,
between 30 and 50. I know it's definitely
it
around
and
there.
it depends, and you can always negotiate, and you can always do different things, but they're like, hey, we're making you an epic ton of money. And all you're doing at some point, you're just kind of sitting there but going, yep. So it also kind of gets into the, should I be able to control more of what, I'm putting all this into? So you have this battle of wills and saying, and I was like, fine. All right. No, you don't have to go through our stuff, but we're going to pull you. And that's just like, but wait a minute. So have you seen the theme of who's losing?
Yeah.
It's not the lawyers. Lawyers are making
Right.
bank.
They're
It's
rolling in that. Yeah.
they are. And it's not at the end of the day, it's not going to be epic. I mean, you've
Right.
got one of the largest, it's an entire monster behemoth on its own, and it's not going to be Apple.
Right.
It's us who are kind of going, so let me get this straight. We're paying more money to play the games that we choose to play, and we're getting less say in what we do. And what's happening to our data, and what's happening to this? So, yeah, yeah. And welcome to the world of court cases, because it's not over till I'd say the fat lady sings, but she's sung, she's come out, she's done a couple of different encores. And
Right.
oh, by the way, she's still not done because there's always a different way you can spin it. But
Right.
yeah. Mhm,
Yeah, like,
mhm.
"Oh, we lost, so we're gonna appeal, and now we lost, so we're gonna appeal, and we have to do this, so we're gonna appeal that," and just keeps going and going and
Exactly.
going.
And you're also seeing a lot of good different, it's kind of goes with like the right to repair. Like, hey, I bought this game or I'm doing this. Can't like, why shouldn't I as the user be able to have some control over this? Or
Right.
especially with the payment platforms, that's one of the things that always starts to chat my hide is like, hey, if there's somebody who can do this better for a lower cost, or I don't want to use this, shouldn't I have some say in that? But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is coming from, so my day job, your day job is Scythe, and I love
Mhm.
that. So my day job, I work for a Wi-Fi router company. I'm the head of technical support for a Wi-Fi router company, and we have an app and we have a subscription that you can purchase. And last year, we transferred our subscription payment platform to be either with the Google Play or Apple App Store because they would not approve the next version of our app because we could pay for the subscription through our website. And it's the
Yeah.
same kind of thing. Like, and I have customers calling all the time saying, "Hey, I don't want to give Apple my credit card number. Like, how can I pay for this
Right.
subscription without going through the Apple App Store?" And I'm like, that's out of our hands. Like, we can't anymore, or else we'll get removed from the platform.
Exactly. And it's the broader impact of that is having that control of, well, what if I want to install this? I want to do it. Why do I have to go through that? Like, shouldn't I
Right.
have control? And it's also interesting to see, like, with, kind of the broader with the App Store, Google Play
Mhm.
and looking at some of the issues they have, I was like, oh, tell me more about the malware that's being installed because y'all had, or you see other apps get removed because they're like, look, we're not going to be able to support, like, we're not going to update this. But it's an app or a game, and people forget that not all apps, as you said, with your customers. I mean, this is not a haha, we're just playing this. We'll just find a different game. Like, no,
Right.
this is the router that's like,
Yeah. This
and
is the
it's
hardware in their home. They need to be able to control it.
yes. And again, I go back to my jokes about like the DSL like router. Like, no, this is connectivity that they are relying upon for everything. You
Yeah.
don't realize how, and you like, are you the right company to tell your company how? Like, no, we're in the better position to tell you what's the better way for our customers to access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the collateral damage from, like, this Epic Games lawsuit, I mean, because apps were getting away with it for a really long time, like, and they weren't really cracking down on it until Epic Games, like, really just, like, snubbed their noses in Apple's face and was like,
Yeah.
"No, this is how it's gonna be." And Apple was like, "No, it's not how it's going to be." But the collateral damage I've seen already in, like, the Kindle app on, my phone. You
Mhm.
can't buy books through the Kindle app anymore. I logged into Vudu where I have my movies, and it said, anything you buy through Vudu now on your phone is going to go through the Google Play Store, and it's happening across the board. This is not just Apple, it's definitely Google as well.
Exactly.
But
And
yeah, so there's that all that fallout. What do you think? Yeah.
it's the unintended consequences. It goes back to and kind of closing that loop on where regulators, it's like, sure, do you understand that trickle down effect or that ripple effect of, do you understand the impact and have we thought it through? And absolutely, like, if you are, I have paid money for this, I have, I rely on it. Maybe other technologies rely on it as well. They've integrated with it, they've built it, and suddenly it's not. there because of, and we also saw it in places for the longest time where if you jailbroke your iPhone, you could not, you've just negated the
The
warranty
warranty
up.
is at void. Yeah.
And I love when you put it on the different circuit boards and stuff like, if you can read this, you voided the, like, your warranty is now void. And I'm just like, yeah, but here's the difference is maybe I'm doing an upgrade. Maybe I'm fixing, or, this is critical if you haven't patched this. It really is that by focusing in on one aspect, Apple protecting its products. And Apple would tell you, well, it's because we have a reputation for security. And if you're downloading an app and it doesn't meet the standards, it's like, but is that really
Right.
Google looking at you,
Yeah.
malware, like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, exactly. Like, if you're going to ask that trust, and I do love when you have it, the sad part is it takes that Goliath of Epic to be able to say, hey, nope, nope. And like, because you've got so many other smaller developers that are like, we have no choice. Like, our margins are thin. We've had to do this, or we have to use a payment plan or processing system. So yeah,
Yeah.
think it through.
Awesome.
Think it through.
Yeah. Think through. How are you going to get that age verification? Think that through. Like,
Exactly.
definitely
Let's
going all the
pull
way
these
back to the
threads.
beginning.
Yeah, well, and it does, and it has long been the issue with regulating, and when if it's a knee jerk reaction that legislators, regulators have, then it's going to go sideways. The fact that CFA is built on war games as the movie, and the fear of like,
Right.
oh well, somebody's got to do this. It's like, let's not have that. No, no, not the knee jerk. And what was it? The Blockbuster. And I'm going to forget now, which was basically the thought of your records could be getting out because someone could go figure out what movies you had rented. And that
Oh,
history creating policy. It was like, wow, so a knee jerk reaction has created this,
yeah.
or putting the profit over the privacy
Right.
has led to this. Mm, we could do better.
Yeah, for sure. So like that just happened. I was thinking there's a movie that I can't think of, but it also just happened in Stranger Things where they like looked up where the
Yes,
person lived based on the video rentals.
it was, and I forget who it was, but it was congressional testimony where they pulled out and said, "Wait a minute, you you can pull up my rental history." Mm, yes, yes, they can. Well, we need to obviously, like, good gracious. Yeah. Mhm.
Now that senator is all about the privacy.
Right. Well, not even, and it was like it's the law of unintended consequences. Is it then makes it so that you have to, and it treats certain information different ways. And it's like, no, no. And again, going back to like internet service providers and those definitions that words have meaning. Do you intend, if we're just going after, like, for example, California is proposing legislation similar to the Kids Online Safety Act, and they said, well, we're going to put 100 million in profit. Well, okay, would you like to see how I can get creative with the books and have subsidiaries of subsidiaries that skirt this? Like, okay,
Oh,
was
for
that really what
sure.
you're going for, or were
Yeah.
you actually going for this? Mhm.
Yeah. No, totally makes sense. So thank you. We were like way over time, so I apologize
Oh,
for
thank you.
taking so much of your time, but I have been fascinated. I love this conversation. I'd love to have you back in the future for sure. I'm sure there's
Absolutely.
lots of court cases we can talk about. So I really, really appreciate you
Absolutely.
taking the time. Everyone go follow Lawyer Liz on Twitter. It's just Lawyer Liz. It's super
I
easy. To
ju-
figure out.
No, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to join, and I highly encourage folks to follow what you're doing, but also just keep an eye on, there are some like different organizations and different ways to engage and see how this is being, how this information and kind of that ripple effect of knowing that all of this ties back together.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then
Oh, thank you.
Johnson, I will do a comment of my email address so that you can get your $25 gift card because you won that on the Amazon giveaway. So that was
Ooh.
just in the chat. So
There you
anyway,
go.
yeah. So thank you again so much, Laura Liz. I had a great time, and hopefully everyone learned a lot about privacy and all the court cases. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.